So I've recently discovered the Elijah Long YouTube channel, and I am now a short bus conquistador in training. If you're not familiar with his channel, it's that guy who went like viral a couple weeks back on like Twitter where it was like, I haven't had a deep thought all day, retard maxing. His whole thing is like the retard max, you know, and what he's saying is like to stop overthinking things, to try to just go with the flow, to kind of just live and not be so captured in thought. You know, in modern society, I think we're trying to pursue the most efficient thing at all times, GPS, things like ChatGPT. And when you do that, it almost takes away, I feel like you think you're getting smarter, but it's like taking away your intelligence. How this applies to like the gun world is you're always seeing people trying to chase the best stats. It's like this internet-induced overthinking that people disguise as autism. What you're really doing is you're analyzing things to a point where you're inactive because you're just so busy analyzing. There's guys that will try to get into guns and they're like, I don't know what barrel length I need to choose. It's so hard to choose from the 11.5 to the 13.7 to the 14.5 to the, and it's like, dude, your thinking has caused you to not even take a step to start to build out your gun, to even start to go down this path. So I am trying to get better about that overthinkingness when it comes to, oh, this and that, you know, it doesn't really matter. You know, you just got to go do something and you will learn as a byproduct of what works and what doesn't. Then you just send it from there, you know what I mean? You change things up based on your experience, not on other people's experiences. And that's something that plagues, I think, especially new gun owners or even guys that are very well versed in experience that have a ton of ARs, right? You see restless AR syndrome is a thing because people are constantly chasing that best optic, that best light, oh, the newest product. Not because they even necessarily want to flex, but they have this sort of efficiency mindset where they are trying to maximize their stats like it's a video game. So I'm here to tell you, you know, because sometimes this is an easy thing to say, it's an easy thing to think, but sometimes you just need somebody else to say it. It really doesn't matter what barrel length you choose or your optics, so long as it's reliable. Like that stuff just really doesn't matter. There are experiences that other people have had that you can look at and say, okay, well, potentially maybe this brand of rifle, optic, whatever accessory, maybe I should avoid this based on other people's experiences, but you don't want to analyze that stuff to such a degree where it paralyzes you in fear and inaction, and you just stagnant deciding on how you want to set up your gun, you know what I mean? You just got to go out there and you just got to get something, and if you have something, you just got to shoot it. I'm not trying to preach or anything like that, because a lot of this, I would say, applies to myself as well. I'm also speaking to myself, I guess, you know what I mean? I see myself in the viewfinder, so it's like I'm giving myself a little pep talk here. But something you often see online is guys, they will have a new rifle, there'll be a new owner of a gun, and I kind of also jump into this myself when I had like my M1 Garand. When you jump into a completely new platform, you start to worry about, okay, is that normal? Is this okay? Is this okay? But you'll see guys like with the shell deflector, and there'll be like a little bit of brass on it, and they're on like Reddit, and they're like, guys, is this normal? I just want to make sure. My son wanted to say hi to me. Anyway, what were we talking about? So you'll see those guys online and they're like, I want to make sure that, is this normal? Is this how do you mount this optic? How do you do this? My A2, my flash hider is a little bit canted over, or gap in the upper and lower. You've seen these things, you know what I'm talking about. And that is a product of the overthinking and the inaction, because if those guys who worry about the gap between their upper and lower go out and shoot their gun, they will notice how it doesn't affect anything. Oh, the gun's fine. You can get the gun pretty dirty. You don't even have to clean it after a certain round count. Like, you don't have to meticulously, autistically clean your gun every single range session. Like, it's gonna be fine. Action is the enemy of anxiety, right? If you have like that anxiety about something, doing something about it is the best way to kind of deter you from, you know, being worried about it, because often your fears don't materialize, like when it comes to your guns or even in your normal life. I think that there's like a study, it's like 90% of the fears, the things you worry about, like never materialize, and that is this case with guns. Like, oh, I'm worried about the twist rate, like what if the blah, 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 blah. Probably never gonna materialize, you're gonna be fine. With it being said, I wanna talk about a little bit about barrel length, because this is something that constantly feels like it's being talked about, especially as suppressors become more prevalent. More people are going to be getting suppressors, people are accessorizing their guns, and then there's that balance with the AR-15 specifically, is really what I'm talking about here. The balance between muzzle velocity and weight and maneuverability and all those kinds of things. I would say that there is a little bit you need to know about it, but there's really not a lot. I'm not trying to overanalyze this. I will tell you that my favorite barrel lengths are 14.5 and 11.5. And 11.5 mainly for like if I'm running like a dedicated suppressed setup, that's what I would like to ideally have. And then having a 14.5 inch, which is the M4 length, unsuppressed, feels like a really well-balanced, perfect setup. And you can still throw a suppressor on that and it doesn't feel too cumbersome. Once you do jump up to something like 16, you're not really at 16 because that barrel is 16.1 inches or whatever the case. Muzzle device takes you out to like 17 or whatever, depending on what you're using. When you put a can on a 16-inch rifle, it does start to feel like it's reaching out there pretty far. You're going past potentially that 20-inch like M16 setup. Those are my two favorites. Something that does not help in the overthinking aspect is the NFA. So when I say 14.5, 11.5 are my personal favorites, that's not me telling you that that's the only thing you gotta get. 16-inch is totally fine. 14.5 would be the standard if it wasn't for the NFA. And the NFA adds that overthinking aspect to people because it's like, okay, well now I gotta think, do I want a pistol brace? Okay, if I don't do pistol, do I do a tack stamp? No, I don't wanna pay the tack stamp. Okay, maybe I'll pin and weld. Okay, well now I gotta pick a suppressor host system that I really want. I don't know what suppressor I'm gonna get. I don't know what mounting system I'm gonna get. So, you know what I mean? You start getting this loop and you don't know what you're doing. You're starting to think about this all the time. So for me, I do the tax stamp just because I have a YouTube channel. There's the legal way to do it, and then there's the spicy way to do it. So you pick your poison. This is not an endorsement of flaw breaking.
The secret ingredient is crime.
If you're being shot at by anybody who's not a stormtrooper, you might want some body armor. And for that, the sponsor of this video is RMA Defense, and they just released their XRT plate, which is the Extreme Rifle Threat plate. It's their special threat plate. I've been saying plate a lot. The XRT is somewhere better than 3+ and just before level 4 performance as far as plates go. Weighing in only at 5.3 pounds for a 10x12 shooter's cut. The best part is that it is affordable for people like you and I who are budget minded and we want a little bit of protection, something to protect our lives and give us a little bit more confidence whenever we're at the flat range or maybe doing something even more serious. The XRT launches at only $199.99, so go check the link down in the description below and pick yours up. Now the next sponsor is HAMMY of HAMMY Prints. Now you may be familiar with him. He is a man who makes many accessories for blasters just like this. If you are looking to hang your blaster up on the wall, you are looking to hang magazines, body armor, various kinds of accessories on pegboard, drywall, grid wall, slat wall, every wall you can think of, right? If you just have a normal tool workbench and you have a tool pegboard behind it, you can also mount some accessories on the wall provided by HAMMY himself. So go check him out. He also makes things like kill flashes, light covers, lens covers, and Car 15 cheek risers. And the newest thing he's got, one of the newer things he's got, is the flared mag wells that are going to be in Battlefield 6. It's actually his competitor, but to me, I like his because they're cheaper anyway. So go check his stuff out and say thanks, HAMMY, for sponsoring the video. Let's get back to the rest. If you have a 16-inch gun out there, you're perfectly fine. Now, again, suppressing it's gonna get you a little bit out there, but it's not a big deal. You know, people often, whenever the 20-inch barrel is mentioned, two things always get brought up, and it's the Marines in Fallujah cleared houses with the 20-inch, and the Muzzle Velocity, Eugene Stoner, it's how he intended it to stabilize a round, full powder burn, all that kind of stuff. This is true. I think the 20-inch rifle is antiquated for a reason though. I do like them. I've had many of them on the channel, but you have to understand that, yeah, if you're moving in a little bit closer quarters, not that I'm a high-speed guy or anything like that, but it is a little bit suboptimal as compared to if you did have 14.5-inch barrel. Often guys recommend like a home defense shotgun. Those start at least 18 inches if you're not doing an SBS or a pistol like the Shockwave. And 18 inches is pretty far out there. So for guys to say like, oh, a 16-inch AR, that's too long for me home defense. But then, you know, you have guys that are like, well, you gotta have a shotgun for home defense. And it's like, well, that's 18 inches. It really doesn't matter as much as you think it does like that. Now, when it comes to the actual muzzle velocity, I could sit there and I could shoot through a chronograph. I don't really know what that means. You don't really know what that means more than likely unless you're a ballistics expert, which I'm not. Maybe you are, but I am certainly not. We could look at the differences between 2,700 feet per second, 28, 29. Oh, wow, that extra inch gave us an extra 100, feet per second. What does that really mean to anybody? Are the results of that evident in ballistic gel testing? I'm sure mathematically, yes, but practically, I don't think that there's much of a significant difference where it's like, it's gonna cause you to overthink. To me, what's more important is how you accessorize the gun, how it feels, the weight of it, how it's balanced, and how you're able to maneuver with it. Those are much more important to me than I would say muzzle velocity. Now I still choose the 11.5 over the 10.5 just because I guess in the back of my mind I tell myself, hey, I just want that little extra power. 10.3 has slayed a lot of bodies, the Mark 18 and stuff. So you have to understand that, yeah, it makes 5.56 a little more anemic, but don't go down this road of overthinking. I'm not saying to be dumb or anything. I think that there's guys that understand ballistics very well, and that's needed and that's cool. You just don't want to get to a point where you're overthinking it, is what I mean to say, where you are completely stagnant again and paralyzed by this thought, and you can't even make a determination. You can't even make a move because you are so lost in the autism and the math. So here's an example of a 14.5-inch barrel with this is set up like an M4. Now this feels very well balanced, okay? Now, I don't have a light on it as of yet, but I will be adding one here soon. And you can collapse the stock all the way in if you really need to get CQB, not ideal body mechanics, but you know, the 14.5, like I said before, really is my personal favorite, and I would only discourage you from going this route if you're disinterested in pistol braces and the NFA. Now, when you throw a can on here, it does feel a little bit longer, it does add that weight out front, but it's still pretty manageable. It's really not that bad. Now, if I was running a dedicated suppressed setup, I would much rather have a 11.5. However, the 14.5 still feels very manageable. Now, when you go out to 16-inch, you do start to feel that just a little bit more, especially if you go out further than that, like 20-inch, which I have thrown this can on. It starts to feel ridiculous, right? You're not mentally well if you're putting a suppressor on a 20-inch like that and running it like an M16A4. But if you can do it, I salute you, brother, because that's a whole lot of weight way out in the front. So when you compare a 14.5 and a 16, you may say, it's probably not that much of a difference. I'll show you right here. So both stocks are off. So let's compare side by side what we're dealing with here. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. There's no way that's real, right? Hold on. I've never actually like gone side to side like this. So yeah, that's actually nuts. Let me see if I can, let me bring this table over here. Okay, so let me show you the difference here between a 14.5 and the 16. Now they're both same buffer tube length and everything. You know, the rails are lined up, the gas blocks are pretty lined up. Yeah, there's your difference right there between a 14 and a 16. So you're gonna feel that little bit of a difference, especially when you throw a can on here, which both of these are set up for, because they both have A2 bird cage, and I got the gate lock can on there. So yeah, that's why I like the 14.5, and it's noticeably different than the 16. I thought that maybe I was being a little girl about it, but you know what? I do prefer the 14.5 just a little bit more for that reason, because it does start to get a lot of weight out there. With that being said, I don't want you to overthink it. I've added to the overthinking by showing you those two barrel lengths. However, this is a perfectly fine training rifle. You don't need to suppress everything. That's another thing we could even talk about in the future, how not every single gun needs a suppressor. You don't want to get to a point where you are overthinking suppressors, which is a whole nother aspect we could talk about. But you go pick up a used Colt like this, you could put plenty of ammunition through and defend your life and your family, and that's kind of what it's all about. Just try not to think so much about the intricate autistic details about every single little thing, and just start to do something, and then you will learn as a byproduct of what works and what doesn't, I guess, if that makes sense. So with that being said, I'm going to wrap this up, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.